What's up, folks? Welcome back. We are here with some more NFL DFS picks and lineup advice, this time for the single game showdown slate on DraftKings and FanDuel. Week 16 Thursday Night Football, New Orleans Saints, and the Los Angeles Rams. Welcome. I am Brian Jester, co founder here at Occupy Fantasy, single game $1 million winner. And in this video, we'll talk about the injuries that impact the slate, low risk lineup construction tips, and the strategies and picks to help you win the biggest prizes that DraftKings and FanDuel have to offer. Let's not waste any time. Let's get into it. Let's talk about the injuries. We'll start with the Saints. They will return Chris Olave, their number one receiver, missed last week with that ankle injury. He is not on the injury report this week. He'll be back and returning to his number one wide receiver role. Kendre Miller, their rookie running back, who we played a lot in preseason DFS. Let's go down. He is just 1K. He is expected to return tonight and be that running back three behind Jamal Williams, behind Alvin Kamara. Now, when all three of these guys were active, it's only been 3 games so far this year. Miller was relegated to about 5 to 10 snaps per game. So not a huge role for him, but maybe someone you mix into your mass multi-entry player pool. And they'll also still be without tackle Ryan Ramczyk, has missed the last couple of games. So just a small downgrade to the Saints offensive line. Now on the Rams side, they are returning, not their wide receiver one, but one of their wide receivers in Tutu Atwell. Let's scroll up here. $2,800 on FanDuel. Now, the past couple of weeks, Demarcus Robinson has emerged as an option in this offense. And even before Atwell suffered his concussion 2 weeks ago, Atwell missed last week's game. He was basically splitting routes with Demarcus Robinson. They were both running about 20 or so routes each. So we expect that tonight. It's not like he had a soft tissue injury, not like he had any sort of joint ailment, concussion. Yes, while a serious injury, not something that affects your conditioning or ability to get back on the field once you clear the protocol. So Atwell, we expect to split reps with Demarcus Robinson, and we expect him to be the most popular value play on DraftKings on a slate where value is extremely thin. So you look at Atwell is 2,800 and Demarcus Robinson is 5,400. So a pretty stark difference in their price tags, despite likely running the same number of routes tonight. Obviously, that could change as D-Rob has been pretty good in the last couple of games, but that's what we expect. Ronnie Rivers, who was Kyron Williams' backup to start the season, he's been out for a while on injured reserve. We expect him to be activated from the injured reserve today. He was full in practice this week. It's not a guarantee by any means. We'll know this by 4 p.m. Eastern, but Ronnie Rivers expected to be activated. Now, the big question is, are they going to keep 4 running backs on the active roster? Probably not. If so, do they release Royce Freeman, put him back on the practice squad? Do they? I don't even know if they can do that, honestly. Zach Evans, the rookie running back, I'm not sure they would subject him to waivers, but let's just monitor this, right? Because if Rivers is back and he is the backup running back, then he would be a value play, a thin value, but a value nonetheless at the mid price on DraftKings. So we'll know more at 4 p.m. Eastern and any corresponding roster moves that come along with that. They'll also get back their tackle Rob Havenstein tonight, who is a pretty big deal for their offense. Joe Noteboom, who was filling in for him, he was also questionable. So if neither one of those guys could play, it could have been pretty disastrous for the Rams tonight. But their tackle Havenstein is expected to be back tonight, which is pretty important for their offense. Now, let's talk about low risk contests. And this slate may be one of the hardest slates of the year for Showdown. I don't want to turn you off. I don't want you to cut this video off now, but you're going to have to use your brain a little bit. It's going to be tough to play this slate because of the lack of value and how condensed all the volume is at the top of the salary table on both sites. So typically, if you've read our Showdown guide at OccupyFantasy.com, you know in low risk contests, we try to lock up all the scoring by playing both starting running backs, both starting quarterbacks, any standout values, and then maybe round it out with high owned plays or kickers or defenses. So if we try to do this tonight and we play, let's just go from the top down. Kyron Williams, easy number one running back for the Rams. Matthew Stafford. We obviously have Alvin Kamara, 10,800 as the lead back for the Saints, and Derek Carr. That leaves us with $1,700. Yes, there are some slates where this could work, but not necessarily this one. You could punt the final 2 positions with Atwell and Rivers if he's active, or God knows who else down here, right? Doesn't feel that great. Of these, if you had to fade one, it's probably Carr because he does have the potential to get vultured by Taysom Hill when he's in the game. So I would probably leave out Carr here. Still 4,100 left per player. Not a lot of guys we're looking to play in this range, as we'll talk about in the high risk section. You could round it out with kicker defense, that's not too bad, right? It's not the best. You're still leaving out Derek Carr. You could captain Tutu Atwell, who we expect to see a decent chunk of ownership for someone in his price range at captain tonight in all contest types, just to help fit in the guys at the top. Let's find him. Where is he? There he is. And then we fit in those four: Kamara, Stafford, Carr. That seems pretty likely. You could play one of the kickers. This might be the best way. I think a decent amount of people will do this. If I was playing low risk on DK tonight, I would probably go this type of route. But again, it's not great, right? Very rarely do you want to captain a wide receiver 3A or 3B, whatever Atwell is going to be tonight. And this also, by the way, is leaving out Olave, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp. Doesn't feel that great, but I think this is probably the way to play it. Not that I would recommend playing low risk contests tonight, but if you had to, this is how I would go. Now, you don't have that luxury over on FanDuel. If you try to play the four core guys of both running backs, both quarterbacks, you literally can't do it. Leaves you with negative $500 of salary left. The problem is, obviously, Kyren at 16K, Stafford at 15.5, Kamara 15. Just no salary breaks whatsoever for the main guys in this game. If you left out Carr, 67.50 per player, you could scroll down and try to fit in 2 punt plays. We know historically that is not the right move for showdown, low-risk contests on FanDuel. I'm just looking here. I mean, it's really tough. Yeah, really, really gross, right? You have to leave out 2 of these guys. Leave out, 2 of the main core guys, which doesn't feel great at all. And the question is, which one do you leave out? Is it Kamara at 15K as the underdog running back? Is it Stafford or Kyren? Kyren's probably slightly overpriced, so I would lean him with the salary savings and then put Stafford at MVP. But again, you're going to leave out one of the highest projected players on the slate doing this. So FanDuel is a very clear avoid and low-risk contest tonight. And just looking at both sites, how you approach low-risk lineup construction should give you a pretty big hint as to how difficult high-risk lineups will be tonight and what the field is going to do in order to play some of these top-tier guys. There's going to be some ownership on the kickers and defenses, especially on both sites. Kickers more so on FanDuel. And some of the cheap values that aren't even that great of values that are going to have elevated ownership just so people can fit in these 4: Cooper Kupp, Chris Olave, Puka Nacua. So we have to really take a step back and think about how we're going to approach this. So let's go back over to DraftKings. Let's get the water sip in. So with the Rams as 4-point favorites, and with the Saints really not having that many great plays outside of Kamara, Carr, Olave, expect the field to build pretty heavy in the Rams' favor tonight. So 5 Rams in a lineup on DraftKings, 4 Rams mostly in a lineup on DraftKings, 4-1 Rams lineups on FanDuel, 3-2 over on FanDuel. So obviously, if you want to get a little different here, you could build more balance with Saints lineups. Now, this isn't the same as Monday night. If you recall, I mentioned that on Monday night, that despite the field building heavy in the Eagles' favor, you didn't even have to try to get leverage. To me, naturally on Monday, playing more Seahawks felt better. They projected better. They spread the ball out more, and it felt like a very easy leverage. Now, 5 Seattle players ended up in the winning lineup on DraftKings, 4 on FanDuel, so it's not always that simple. Here, you have to force it a little more. If you just built with 0 rules, you would probably end up with more Rams players, so you have to consciously make a decision to put more Saints into your lineup if that's a direction that you want to go. And it's not that bad tonight, right? Like if you built that way, you want all the volume to flow through one of the Rams receivers or Kyren Williams, or Stafford gets left out. Their secondary and tertiary players don't contribute much, while the Saints have multiple guys that touch the football. So it's not out of line, but certainly not as easy of leverage as it was on Monday night. Now let's talk about these values, right? This is what makes it difficult on tonight's slate. If you just look after the studs, right? Chris Olave and up. Those we will consider the studs tonight. Rashid Shaheed, wide receiver 2, 7K. He's overpriced, right? Yes, he has big playability, but a guy who is 7K and hasn't scored more than 8 DraftKings points in the last 4 weeks, hasn't scored more than 8 DraftKings points in like 75% or 80% of his games, 7K overpriced. Now, he will be under 20% owned on DraftKings specifically, right around that mark on FanDuel. So if you're looking for immediate leverage, you can pay up a little bit and play Shaheed. We know he has 20-point upside, and the field's not going to do it because he is way overpriced. But I think that's a good way to get different if you want him to be your point of differentiation in your lineup, because we know he has upside. It's not like we're playing some of these other low-owned guys that we have to pray they get a catch or two. At least Shaheed, we know, is going to get some receptions and has the ability to pop off for 20 plus. So he's probably one of the best low-owned players on DraftKings today. Taysom, 6,600. Yes, he will touch the ball. Yes, he will get some goal line carries. But at $6,600, he's similar to Shaheed in that sense, where not going to get a ton of volume, more likely than not to score less than 5 points. Could get a couple touchdowns and put up 20 plus, but the odds are he's probably not. So he is going to be under 20% owned as well. Keep on scrolling. We have Tyler Higbee, who doesn't command a ton of volume. I mean, had one of his best games 3 weeks ago, but other than that, barely expect him to get more than 10 DraftKings points. He is $5,800, going to be less than 15% owned, maybe less than 10%. D-Rob, we talked about. I don't think he'll get over 20% tonight. Maybe people box score watch, but with Tutu Atwell back and people looking at projections, I don't think he will be. He's overpriced at 5,400. He and Atwell should be around the same price, I would imagine, as they run similar amount of routes. So as you listen to this and keep this in mind, you should understand that as a result, the kickers, who aren't even that, they're not household names, which typically for the casual player causes them to not click them as often, but they have no choice tonight, right? These guys, they're going to see the points per game, look at their game logs, look at the guys around them, have no choice but to click in. And I don't even know how to say his name. I've never even heard his name on TV. Lucas Havrisik, that could be wrong. But Blake Groupie, have heard his name. And these guys will be popular, as are the Rams and Saints at $3,800 and $3,400. So we expect all four of the special teams options to be over 20% owned on DraftKings, which is pretty rare for all four to do that. Jamal Williams, backup running back, $4,200, probably a little too overpriced considering Kamara is the lead back here. Jawan Johnson, 4K. We expect him under 20%, under 15%. Yes, he had the touchdown last week, but other than that, not a great season for him. If you look at the routes run last week for the Saints tight ends, I mean, just pure insanity. Somewhere in the realm of, I don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head, but Jawan Johnson ran like 13 routes. Foster Moreau ran 12 or 13 routes. Taysom Hill ran 9 or 10 routes. Jimmy Graham ran like 6 routes. So sick, four-headed tight end room. That doesn't help anyone in fantasy football. A.T. Perry will be wide receiver 3 here. A couple points. Not the worst play on the board at this price tag. Get a couple of points. Maybe that's what you're hoping for. Lynn Bowden, same thing, right? A couple of points at 3K. Both these guys, maybe Bowden will be a little bit more popular, but Perry and Bowden. Is it Bowden? I think it's Bowden. You guys correct me in the comments. I'm sure you will if I'm wrong. So a couple of points here, not the worst thing. Atwell, again, if he goes back to the wide receiver 3 role, even if it's a split wide receiver 3 role, has the best upside and likely best median projection of anybody outside the kickers and defenses, which is why we expect him to be 25% plus, 30% plus. You could even see him get to like 40 or 50% plus in smaller field GPPs. So he'll be the popular value down here. Freeman, his running back 2 role could be gone if Ronnie Rivers is activated. Now, if Rivers isn't activated today, Freeman's not the worst play here as a change of pace spell. Kyron Williams running back here at $2,600. We like him a lot more if Ronnie Rivers is not activated. Moreau, we talked about 13 routes, couple of targets maybe. Not the worst play, right? But that's the definition. That's the description of these guys, not the worst play. And there's all these. But people are going to play them. Ronnie Rivers, if he's active, right? People are going to play these guys, Ben Skoranek, just so they can fit in all these other players. So the question remains, do you follow the field and play most of these garbage plays? Play one in each lineup to allow you to fit in these other guys? That feels pretty bad, right? There are other slates where we can easily play lower price players that have clear roles that are still low owned because there are a multitude of options. Not necessarily sure that's the case today. I would much rather build balanced and play more guys in the Nakua, Olave, Shaheed, maybe Taysom, Higbee, Demarcus Robinson, kickers defenses range, then jamming in 3-4 of these guys up top. Does that also mean you want to play a mid-range captain? Probably not. Maybe kicker or defense in small field GPPs. But again, that doesn't feel great either because the odds are one of these guys are going to pop off and be the captain that you need. So all this is a really long way of saying that it's a difficult slate. And I think the optimal approach tonight is to leave your captain pool to these guys, maybe Shaheed and above, but more than likely Olave and above, and hope that all the scoring flows through that particular player. And then you only play one, maybe two of these other studs while filling in a more balanced lineup that doesn't dip into the guys that are expected to score 2, 3 points. Right now, small field GPPs is a little different because you can get 2, 3, 4 points out of these guys and be optimal, and not necessarily optimal, but have a winning lineup in smaller GPPs. But for large field GPPs, it just feels bad to pray that you get 2 to 5 points from any of these players down here. And that's what the field's going to do anyway, so it's likely to be duplicated. So anytime you're praying for something to happen, and if it does happen, you're still duplicated, that feels like a very bad approach to me. And we know historically that's not a great way to play Showdown DFS. Let me see if there's anything else I want to hit on here before. So I think the one captain leverage on both sites especially are the receivers. We don't expect Cooper Kupp, Nakua, Chris Olave to be super popular at captain, whereas we expect most of it to go to Kyren Williams, Kamara, Stafford for the most part. Maybe a little bit Derek Carr, but probably not. Kupp will be the highest on the group, obviously, but Nakua and Olave especially are the guys that we're looking at. No underperforming wide receivers this week in this game. So we're just relying on what we have. Again, very, very tough slate. But I think the same goes for FanDuel as well, where we expect a vast majority of the MVP allocation by the field to go to Kyren, to go to Stafford, and then to Kamara, which leaves Kupp, Carr, Olave, Nakua as the guys that are going to go overlooked. I would much rather fade these three, and yes, it's scary because they have the highest expectation on the slate. But we've seen Kupp, we've seen Olave, we've seen Nakua have big games. Wouldn't shock us on a primetime game for them to be the highest scorer in this game. I think that's what I would prefer in the largest contest. Now, smaller GPPs, you just stick to these top three, and you have no issues. Let me see. Any other value plays to talk about here? Now, the defenses are 9K and 9,500 respectively. Kickers project a little better on FanDuel, so they will be much higher owned. We have both kickers over 25% projected ownership. Both defenses under 20%. That immediately stands out to me as a play. And if you remember all the goddamn charts I brought up for the low total games a couple of weeks ago, we saw that while the focus of those charts were how much more often defenses are optimal in lower total games, it was still a little eye-popping to see how often defenses are optimal in regular games. This counts as a regular game. So I think when you have the defenses a little under-owned compared to the kickers and no other values, playing the defenses heavily tonight on FanDuel is a really great way to get different without sacrificing too much upside or floor even, really. So just something to keep in mind. I think that's probably the preferred strategy on FanDuel. Whereas on DraftKings, talking about playing balanced, not playing the scrub values as much, and obviously the same goes for FanDuel. But the defenses stick out as probably the best on both sides of the leverage plays that are available to us. So that'll do it for this video. Appreciate you watching as always. Now, things are going to change with the Ronnie Rivers potential activation. Maybe we get more clarity on some playing time, and maybe just we think about some more strategies. So make sure after you watch this video to read our daily plug at OccupyFantasy.com. Our writer Bismo does a great job of ranking all the plays on the slate, giving lineup construction tips for different contest types on both sites, laying out the overall slate notes that will impact how you build your lineups, contest selection, everything you need for a showdown slate, a full roadmap. If you want that extra edge, make sure you go read that at OccupyFantasy.com. Our model will be extremely helpful today, as it is always, with rankings for both FanDuel and DraftKings with projected ownership. And the lineup builder especially is going to be helpful today. I use it every slate, but especially we'll be using it today to see just what is possible, right? When I put in all the rules that we normally put in for showdown, what types of lineups are being spit out? Are they different than what I was looking at this morning? Are they different from what the field's doing? Or is it lining up with what the field's doing? So the lineup builder, extremely important. I encourage you to check it out if you have not already. Final request, make sure you subscribe to the channel here on YouTube. It is free to do so. Just click the subscribe button below this video. Obviously, it helps us out. Let's not play games here. Obviously, it helps us out, but it helps you out as well because we will be putting out the Saturday short slate video sometime tomorrow on Friday. Our NFL writer Chris will put out the main slate video on Saturday. We will have main slate live Q&A at some point this weekend, and then we're actually gonna have a live stream for the Christmas slate. Yes, we're degen enough to put out a Christmas live stream. Just subscribe. The best way to get notified when we're live, when these videos are posted. It'll just help you out. And again, give us a thumbs up if you like the content. Any questions, I will monitor this channel throughout the day. Comment on the video below. We will happily get back to you. If you want more in-depth discussion, chat with other members of the community, chat directly with OccupyFantasy.com staff, join our Discord server, OccupyFantasy.com/Discord. We would love to have you. So, Brian Jester for Occupy Fantasy, thank you for listening, and good luck on tonight's slate.